They say he's almost a god, people whisper in the States. No one's ever been able to say no to him. His mother once said, "Steven doesn't even understand what no means." His films have earned over $5 billion. He has an extraordinary business instinct and a unique eye behind the camera. But rumors persist that Steven Spielberg is a strange creature, a childlike old man without a soul, that he's cruel, that something happened to him long ago, something that changed him forever. One night, Arnold Spielberg woke little Steven to show him a rare and magical sight, a meteor shower. Half asleep, the boy stood by the window, mesmerized as dazzling balls of cold fire streaked across the dark sky. The ghostly light of the falling meteors lit up his pale cheeks. Soon, the celestial show ended, and the world returned to normal. "Did you like it?" Arnold asked as his son padded back to bed. "Yeah, it was beautiful," Steven replied, crawling under the covers. Then suddenly he added, "One day, all of that will be mine." "All of what?" Mr. Spielberg started to ask, but Steven was already asleep. After that strange night, young Spielberg changed dramatically. Once painfully shy, Steven now became impossible to ignore. His little sister Anne suffered the most. He would sneak under her window and howl for hours. "Moon! The moon has come for you!" Terrified, the girl lay frozen in bed night after night, knowing daytime wouldn't bring relief either. One of Steven's favorite games was to decapitate his sister's beloved doll, stick the head on a knife, and serve it at dinner, neatly arranged between a lettuce leaf and a blood-red tomato. One time, the Spielbergs went to see a sci-fi movie about terrifying alien cocoons that devoured people in their sleep. When they got home, Steven immediately built a replica of one of those cocoons and hid it under his other sister's bed. When she saw the alien monster, the girl was so terrified she lost the ability to speak for an entire year. Neighbors didn't like the mean little boy. Whenever they mocked or teased him, Steven's revenge was swift. He would write down their names in his blacklist, the Spielberg list. He promised horrifying punishments for everyone on it, from the electric chair to being burned alive. In reality, though, Steven's wrath usually took the form of sneaking out at night to smear peanut butter on his enemies' windows. He was eventually caught in the act. The blacklist was discovered, and its author was severely whipped. His irritation with other kids would become a defining trait of his life, and his peers could feel it, and paid him back in kind. Once, during a school cross-country run, only 2 boys remained on the final lap. One was mentally delayed, the other, the future creator of Indiana Jones. And how bitter it was for Steven to hear the other kids cheering for the disabled boy and booing him with whistles and catcalls. The walk home from school often turned into a trial by fire. Steven had to fight his way past a gauntlet of boys who couldn't wait to knock him down. They sensed he was different, and they refused to accept it. But one day, Spielberg found a weapon, one that could help him deal with all his enemies. It came in the form of a brand new 8mm film camera, a long-awaited gift from his father. With it, first of all, he could reshape reality into whatever he wanted it to be. Second, he could charge money for screenings. And third, the bullies from around the neighborhood suddenly turned into obedient sheep whenever Steven offered them roles in his movies. Even his sister got roped into the business. Terrified into total compliance, she agreed to do anything. Her job was to sell popcorn and drinks in the improvised movie theater Steven set up in their backyard. All these screenings, for which local kids were charged 25 cents, were Steven's idea, He quickly realized that filming was only half the job. You also had to know how to distribute your product. To support his creative ambitions as a filmmaker, Spielberg found another source of income. He launched a small citrus-growing business. His grandmother in Australia would send him lemon seeds, and from those, he grew lemon trees. The citrus venture turned out to be a surprisingly effective way to fund his passion. Selling just 6 tiny trees at 75 cents each was enough to buy a fresh box of film stock. Everything became a film set. The streets, the local hospital's hallways, even the airfield. At just 15, Spielberg made his first full-length feature, Firelight. The film ran for 2.5 hours and cost $500 to produce, a little more than half of which came from his father. Firelight became Spielberg's first real success, both as a director and as a producer. The enterprising teen managed to sell the film to a local movie theater. Not only did he recoup the cost, he even made a $50 profit. Getting into the film program at a California college wasn't easy. In the meantime, Spielberg found a way to sneak onto studio lots. He'd buy a ticket for a public tour, then hide in a quiet corner. After the group left, he would wander through the studio, sometimes slipping into empty offices, sitting down in a big chair, straightening his imaginary tie, and thinking, just like he had as a child, one day, all of this will be mine. And one day, it was. In 1967, Universal Studios offered the 21-year-old Spielberg a 7-year directing contract. Stunned, he hesitated. "But I still have a whole year left in college." "Kid," the manager said, "do you want to study or do you want to direct?" To this day, Spielberg enjoys telling the story of how, on his first real set, no one believed he was the director. Just a few years later, after releasing Duel and the Sugarland Express, Spielberg was hailed in the press as one of the most phenomenal debutantes in film history. Still, critics unanimously noted something odd, a kind of childishness in his characters and the choices they made. Young Spielberg gave plenty of interviews. When asked what he feared most, he'd say, "Elevators, human relationships, and children." In truth, his ability to connect with people remained fragile and unstable, just like in childhood, especially when it came to women. There were 2 of them, Amy Irving and Kate Capshaw. The first marriage ended in a small scandal. After the split, Amy Irving told interviewers that she had never met a more emotionally distant man than her ex-husband. According to her, Spielberg's favorite pastime was sitting alone in a dimly lit room, surrounded by strange, exotic figurines, part dolls, part deities. He would spend hours talking to them in the voice of a wounded child, complaining about his failed marriage and broken family life. Once a month, for 7 years, the great director would gather a group of close friends at his home for a bizarre game he claimed was French, which he called petit jeu. The rules were simple. Each person had to share a story in which they'd behaved in a completely inappropriate or shameful way. At one of these gatherings, Amy Irving's husband allegedly revealed a disturbing personal secret that shocked everyone present. Irving has never shared what it was, only adding that compared to this, Nabokov's Lolita would be considered recommended reading for grade school. She also claimed that Spielberg didn't see her as a person at all, but observed her like a scientist watching a lab rat, even taking notes in a little notebook he always carried with him. Everyday life never seemed to interest Spielberg much. For years, he and his family lived in a modest home in the unglamorous Coldwater Canyon neighborhood, renting a house for $49,500. In the yard sat a beat-up old car he'd bought at a garage sale for $400. But after the divorce, Spielberg bought a massive mansion in Beverly Hills. And now, when the green Porsche parked outside needs to be moved, a chauffeur rushes out at the push of a button, ready to whisk the famous director off to his Malibu beach house, his version of a country retreat. Steven Spielberg and his second wife, Kate Capshaw, live a fairly reclusive life. Outwardly, they seem like the perfect couple. They don't smoke, drink, or use drugs, and they never throw wild parties. They spend their time quietly as a family, coming home together, watching TV, playing games. But in the few interviews that Kate Capshaw, a professional actress, gives to the press, there's always a subtle tone of unease. Every year, Spielberg allows her to act less and less. She's afraid that one day, he won't let her leave the house at all. Those who know Spielberg well believe that he tends to see women solely as instruments for his emotional stimulation. Spielberg has often said that painful life experiences are incredibly useful to him as a director, that he draws strength from his own suffering. There were times I just screamed in terror, he recalls about some of the darker moments in his married life. The human in me was crying in despair. But the director? He'd run to the next room, grab the camera, and shoot my reflection in the mirror. I had to capture it. Honestly, I can't imagine being anything else. I'm a director, and that's all I'll ever be. Maybe it's that ability to use everything around him that made Spielberg a true giant of the film industry. And not just any giant, a singular one. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. People fear him. Countless rumors swirl around him. And amusingly, every one of them seems to be true. Steven Spielberg, the star boy who never really grew up, conquered the world with his naive, childlike films. And a big part of that success was his friendship with another Hollywood misfit, the digital wizard, George Lucas. For years, Lucas was best known as the creator of Star Wars. Back in the 70s, when he couldn't find a studio capable of producing the special effects he envisioned, Lucas founded Industrial Light and Magic. That same company later created the visual magic behind Spielberg's biggest hits of the 1980s and 90s. Lucas served as producer. They say the tech genius immediately saw Spielberg's immense potential. Whatever the case, the two hit it off. Last year, a Los Angeles newspaper published a curious piece titled "The Golem of Beverly Hills." It claimed that Spielberg and Lucas had recently become fascinated with Kabbalah and the concept of artificial intelligence. According to the article, the digital wizard and the creator of Jurassic Park were planning to build a modern-day golem, an artificial being completely under their control. The paper stirred up public anxiety by reporting that the pair intended to stage an unforgettable stunt. During a film screening, the golem would step out of the screen and start wreaking havoc on the audience. Readers were thrilled. No one questioned the story's authenticity. After all, from this legendary Spielberg-Lucas duo, people had learned to expect anything. Lucas, with his genius for solving technical puzzles, and Spielberg, with his unstoppable willpower, it seemed like a believable team for something this outrageous. And Spielberg really is unmatched in his ability to get what he wants. On one of his earliest jobs, trying to direct an episode of Night Gallery for Universal, Spielberg became smitten with an aging Hollywood star. She was head of the studio and was deeply skeptical about giving such a young, by industry standards, director a shot. So Spielberg began bringing her a single rose every day, placed in an empty Pepsi bottle. The woman, well past her prime, was so charmed by this boyish passion that she stopped caring about his lack of experience and gave him the job. 5 years later, Spielberg recalled, "I had a whole batch of those Pepsi bottles. I numbered each one and delivered one every day like clockwork. She never knew I had it all planned out. I didn't have time to just sit around waiting for them to approve me." That's why those who knew Spielberg in his 20s now say, "Even back then, we knew one day we'd all be working for him." In 1986, TV Guide dubbed Spielberg a hard-nosed Hollywood mogul for stunts like that. But the older journalists didn't get it. Would a mogul really try to impress a woman with the tricks of a 12-year-old boy? Only Spielberg would. Because in truth, he never stopped being one. And that's exactly why someone as withdrawn, nearly a recluse, as Steven Spielberg creates films that are so open, so universally understood. That's where it comes from. This unique blend of adult cynicism and childlike wonder that defines both the director and his characters. Indeed, all of Spielberg's heroes, Sheriff Brody, Indiana Jones, even Oscar Schindler, share this duality. They're tough, yet naive, like overgrown children. Spielberg's office resembles the palace of a retired Arabian wizard. It features a game room, a private cinema, a swimming pool filled with real goldfish, its own restaurant, and even a garden. One odd detail. At first, the office was filled with candy. Employees could help themselves as much as they wanted. But a few years later, Spielberg ordered all sweets replaced with fresh fruit. Fruit is healthier. A child's whim? Brilliant management? Maybe both. But it definitely wasn't just about caring for employees' well-being. One former staffer even claimed the atmosphere in the office had become eerie, as if they were being fattened up for some monstrous feast, where they'd eventually be served as the main course. Maybe she was half mad, or maybe anything connected to Spielberg is bound to stir a bit of unease. Either way, one thing is certain. Spielberg never does anything just because. 5 years ago, he made Schindler's List, a deeply serious drama about the Jewish tragedy during World War II. Critics rejoiced, and the film won 7 Oscars, including Best Director. Few realized that Schindler's List was actually a carefully calculated move. Just another rose in a Pepsi bottle. You see, Spielberg had never received an Oscar for directing, not for E.T., not for Indiana Jones. So one day, he decided to force the Academy's hand by making a film that would be Oscar-proof, undeniable. And just to cover all his bases, that same year, he released Jurassic Park, a mega-hit adventure film for the masses. Once again, he hit the bullseye. Lately, real human beings seem to interest the genius director less and less. His focus has shifted to animation. Drawn characters appeal to Spielberg because of their total obedience. He's long dreamed of a puppet theater where every string is in his hands, and he alone is the master. Tsustiku, fittingly, the latest project from Hollywood's Magic Man is The Prince of Egypt, a full-length animated feature about the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt. It's a second take on the Schindler's List theme. Now, CGI characters suffer more convincingly than real actors ever could. A paradox? No. More like another calculated move. The old saying about chasing too many rabbits doesn't apply to Spielberg. No matter how many he goes after, he always catches them all. After all, he still holds the same thing he did as a boy, a camera. The same weapon he once aimed at the stars, now aimed at the world, and it never missed.